Hey everyone, first things first for this one, yes, we're going to be looking at how you remove the pre-travel from your Gen 5 Glock trigger or your GPT trigger, but I don't recommend doing this modification unless you have some experience in doing these things because there are several safeties involved. You could put your gun into an unsafe state if you don't abide by all of the different specs and things like that to keep it within that realm. We'll cover a little bit of that, but again, I don't recommend doing this for anybody unless you have the right experience and know the dangers that you're working with. All right, guys, let's Gen 5 Glock trigger system. So this one, you can see it actually has quite a bit of pre-travel, and this has been safety checked before the video as well as a moment ago. So you can see all that pre-travel, and this is actually the Glock Performance trigger. So it has good control of the over-travel because I wound up using the Ghost Performance Unit trigger. So it's got good over-travel stop, but it still has a ton of pre-travel. So I want to cover how to get rid of that. All right, so of course, first we got to take it apart. We've got a couple of tools here. We've got the Glock tool, which comes in handy all the time. We've got a 440 tap, which you don't really necessarily need it, but I find it's a little bit better than if you don't use it. Little tiny 440 set screw, and I think this is 440 by 3/8 if I remember correct. This is a .050 Allen key, and then you'll have some way to cut your plastic, right? So let's get right into it. All right, so here is the trigger housing, right? So you can see, let's see if I can get here, this little shelf right here. This is the drop safety, right? So you want to keep that intact. So you're going to only be able to remove so much of that before you don't have that drop safety feature. So you're going to want to get this screw pretty close to up front if possible. Otherwise, you're probably going to remove too much of that shelf and the pre-travel. Once you do that, you're going to have to modify the little dingus right here because this will be too long and it won't, it'll be folded in. So we'll get to that here in a moment. Let's pull this little guy apart. All right. So you'll want to kind of, depending on what size pin you're using, I've seen some folks use roll pins. I've seen folks use set screws like this one. This one, you'll obviously not want to get it too far in there. Otherwise, like I said, you're going to not have the advantage of having your drop safety, which is bad. So don't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to mark somewhere pretty early on. And this is not adjustable, so you won't be able to adjust it in the end. And then you want to follow it up top. That way you have a marking there to follow from right here. Then you'll want to get yourself a center punch like so. These are very handy. This will help you to make a mark right where you need to drill the hole because you don't have much wiggle room since your screw is going to be nearly as wide as this area right here. So try to get yourself right in the middle. You need a nice firm surface to get your dimple in. All right, I hit it twice. So you can see right here is the little dimple. Now, I'm gonna just check it before, see if it looks like it would be good to go. And it looks like we should be good to go with that. So, like I said, depending on the size of whatever you're using, roll pin, set screw, etc., you'll need to adjust where you want to put this. I've heard it referred to as a grub screw, set screw, etc. I'm going to go drill this on the drill press, and obviously when you do that, you got to be really careful because you're going to be running right into the ejector that goes into there. So make sure you don't overdo it. I've seen some folks use a hand drill. Be right back. All right, so now we got our hole drilled right here. I got a little plastic shavings in the middle, and it looks like it came out pretty darn good. And I'm gonna check the hole. Yeah, it looks like we're gonna still have plenty of the drop safety shelf there. So now I'm going to do a quick little thread Like I said, this isn't 100% necessary, but I find it to be a little bit helpful because it gives the screw, you know, a guideline or a guide in, and it just makes it easier rather than, because if you don't do this, I've noticed sometimes I have stretched out the plastic on the outsides, and that's not good. All right, I got a little bit more shavings in the middle there, so I'll just pick them out with the little Allen key, and boom. Looks like we've got a nice solid platform to work with. Now we'll get our set screw, grub screw, whatever you like to call it, and we'll get it put into here. That one's about perfect height right there for it, right? And it feels, it's got a little jagged edge, so I may just give it a little tiny sand with a Dremel wheel. But if you look here, you'll see that there is still some of that safety shelf left, right? So now we're gonna put it back together and test it. All right, everyone, I noticed that there's probably about 80% of folks that keep on watching my videos that are not subscribed. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and hit that subscribe link. So now we're gonna put it back together and see where we're at. All right, so right away I can tell that if you look in here, that the little dingus is tucked in. So it's not being able to be effective. So that means that I'm gonna have to remove some of the material from that. Not a big deal, but we wanna see where our trigger's at and see how much pre-travel we removed. Looks like we got quite a bit of it, almost most of it. So we've just got that little teeny tiny bit of pre-travel, then we got the wall and the brake, and like I said, the over-travel is captured by the disconnector. Let's try it again. Look at that. It's got almost no pre-travel, but yet we still got the drop safety shelf. So now we just got to modify the dingus, which is the little safety thing, just in case you didn't know. All right, so first thing you'll want to do is you'll want to remove the little sideways piece right here. See the part that goes off to the side? You'll want to remove that first. So I'll just use handy dandy razor blade. Boom, there we go. You can see the little side piece is off, and somebody more knowledgeable than I said that you don't want to go below the threshold of where that was, so make sure that you pay attention to that when you're removing material from the top of the dingus. What I've done is use the Glock tool to kind of hold the dingus out right here so that you can remove some material. All right, so we removed some material. Now we're gonna put it back together and see where we're at. All right, so here we go. This is where we're at. It looks like the dingus is not popping out yet. So if I pull it forward just a little tiny bit, it pops out, but then it works, right? So what I need to do is pull it back apart and remove some more material. So we'll be right back. All right, so for this one, I wound up removing, as you can see here, there's a couple little pieces of material. I had to go right down to the maximum for this one because I had removed so much of the pre-travel on the trigger. So for the dingus, you wanna make sure that you have at least a gap to where it'll fit a piece of paper in between there. So let's see if we can get in there. And yes, we do. And of course, you wanna make sure that it works. So grab your trigger outside of pressing that. And it works, right? So now let's take a look at pre-travel. Very, very little, right? Now, there's actually more over-travel, so I might actually have to do the over-travel mod with set screw as well. But check that out. So very little pre-travel. So if you guys like my content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. That's the way you do a pre-travel adjustment on your Gen 5 Glock. Thank you.